The courtroom clock in Augusta, Georgia, chimed 9 a.m., and every seat was already taken. At the front table sat Aisha Coleman, a 34-year-old black mother of two and an ER nurse, still in her faded teal scrubs. Her braided hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail, her hospital ID badge clipped to her waist, and her sneakers bore the wear of a 12-hour night shift. She'd spent the night running trauma codes, consoling grieving families, and saving strangers. There'd been no time to go home. She'd come straight to court. This hearing was non-negotiable. It was to determine partial custody of her children, challenged by her ex-husband, who'd recently hired a high-powered attorney and claimed Aisha was too emotionally erratic and absent to parent effectively. Aisha had medical records, character references, and a stack of evidence, but she wasn't prepared for the moment Judge Evelyn Marshall, 60, impeccably dressed in a tailored black robe, looked up from her bench, scanned the room, and stopped cold, her gaze fixed on Aisha's scrubs. "Ms. Coleman," the judge said, her tone sharp, "do you believe this courtroom is an extension of your hospital ward?" Aisha blinked, caught off guard. "No, Your Honor. I came straight from my shift. I didn't have time to change." Judge Marshall's eyebrow arched. "This is a court of law, not a locker room. You're here for a child custody hearing, and you appear in what looks like sleepwear." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Aisha's attorney, Marcus Tate, started to interject, but the judge cut him off. "Spare me, counsel. Ms. Coleman, your attire is disrespectful to the gravity of this proceeding." Aisha straightened in her chair. The gallery, filled with clerks, interns, and strangers, watched, some wincing, others embarrassed for her. But Aisha didn't shrink. She met the judge's eyes and said, her voice low but steady, "With all due respect, Your Honor, these sleepwear scrubs have blood on them. It's not mine. It's from the 9-year-old girl I helped save from cardiac arrest at 4:32 this morning. I didn't have time to change because I chose saving her life over being 5 minutes late to change for you." The courtroom went still. You could hear the faint buzz of the overhead lights. Judge Marshall opened her mouth, but no words came. The truth had walked in, wearing teal polyester and scuffed sneakers with frayed laces. Aisha's hands, still marked with adhesive from 4 tape and ink from the trauma board, rested calmly on the table. Marcus Tate glanced from his client to the judge, speechless. In the gallery, a woman quietly pulled out her phone and began recording. Judge Marshall exhaled sharply. "This is not a theater for grandstanding, Ms. Coleman." Aisha tilted her head, not defiant but honest. "No, ma'am, it's a courtroom, and I respect it enough to show up, even if it meant not changing out of the clothes I wore to save someone's daughter." The judge's gavel struck once, hard. "Let's move on." But it was too late. Outside, the first clip hit social media. "Nurse shamed for scrubs in court. Her response stuns room." By the lunch recess, the video had 700,000 views. By 2 p.m., it surpassed 6 million. Aisha's words echoed across platforms. "Save a life or change for you. I chose the life." Hashtags surged. Hashtag let her wear scrubs. Hashtag nurse honor. Hashtag respect the teal. Local news picked it up by 3 p.m., and by evening, national networks were looping the clip. Aisha, oblivious to the online storm, watched the clock. After the hearing, she had to pick up her son from school. Still in those same scrubs, now carrying more than blood. They carried a story. When Aisha stood to speak again, the room didn't freeze in shock. It listened in reverence. The opposing counsel, Vincent Perry, a polished attorney in a pinstripe suit with cufflinks that likely cost more than Aisha's car payment, approached the podium with a faint smirk. "Ms. Coleman, can you confirm you chose to work a night shift knowing you had this custody hearing today?" "Yes," Aisha said, nodding. "And you prioritized your job over preparing for this case? Over your children?" A sharp gasp spread through the gallery. Aisha leaned forward, unflinching. "No, sir. I prioritized a stranger's child because if my own were coding at 4 a.m., I'd pray someone stayed for them. I didn't choose my job over my kids. I chose to be the mother I'd want in their corner if they needed saving." Perry faltered. Aisha continued, her voice quiet but piercing. And for the record, every shift I work keeps them fed, housed, and in school. These scrubs might not impress this room, but they paid for the counseling my kids needed when their father left. A few in the gallery whispered. A man in the back wiped his eyes. Judge Marshall gripped her gavel but didn't strike. She just watched. Perry cleared his throat. You seem upset, Miss Coleman. That's understandable. I'm not upset. Aisha cut in, her tone even.
I'm exhausted.
There's a difference. One's weakness. The other's what you get when you hold a family together while the world calls you unfit for not having time to press a skirt. The room shifted not in verdict, but in weight. In a space built on rules and appearances, Aisha had reminded everyone what strength looked like. Blood-stained teal, smudged eyeliner, and a woman who didn't apologize for being real. After Aisha's words, the courtroom sat in a tense quiet, where protocol wrestled with conscience. Perry returned to his seat, flipping through notes that now seemed irrelevant. Judge Marshall called a recess, but Marcus Tate stood. Your Honor, before we break, I'd like to call our witness. The judge sighed. Proceed. The doors swung open, and in walked Dr. Naomi Freeman, Chief of Emergency Medicine at Augusta General Hospital. In her early 50s, she wore a crisp white coat over a navy suit, moving with purpose to the witness stand. Aisha's eyes widened. She hadn't known her boss was coming. Dr. Freeman was sworn in, then turned to the bench. I'm here to set the record straight about Aisha Coleman's work, because it seems her scrubs were mistaken for carelessness, Freeman said. The room tensed. Aisha is the nurse I call when the rookies freeze in a crisis. She's the one who holds dying patients' hands when their families are miles away. Last summer, she skipped breaks for 30 straight days so her team could rest. She wore scrubs today not to disrespect this court, but because she stayed to save a girl who stopped breathing, then raced here to fight for her own kids. Judge Marshall leaned forward. Freeman didn't pause. If you think that's disrespect, I invite every gavel in this building to shadow a trauma ward on a Saturday night. Silence. The court reporter's fingers hovered over the keys. Freeman produced a folded paper. I'd also like to submit this letter from the parents of the girl Aisha saved this morning. They wrote it in the ICU waiting room when they heard where she went after the code. She handed it to the clerk. The note was brief. To the court, if Aisha Coleman hadn't stayed past her shift, our daughter wouldn't be alive. Give her kids back. She's earned them 1,000 times over. Sniffles echoed in the gallery. Judge Marshall said nothing, but her expression softened. Aisha wiped her eyes. Not from fragility, but because someone had voiced the truth she'd never known how to demand. The courtroom recessed for lunch, but no one talked about custody law. They talked about Aisha, the nurse in scrubs, the mother who stood firm, the woman who chose a child's pulse over courtroom polish. Outside, a crowd gathered. Nurses, paramedics, even a firefighter in gear. The viral clip had gone global. By 12:30 p.m., a news channel ran a segment. The scrubs that shook Augusta. Another's ticker read, ER nurse shamed for uniform silences court with truth. In her chambers, Judge Marshall requested the morning's transcript. She read Aisha's words, not as a judge but as a grandmother. They stung. She'd never had to choose between saving a stranger's child and protecting her own. Aisha had done both in the same breath. Aisha sat in the hallway with a half-eaten protein bar, Marcus beside her. You okay? He asked. She nodded. I'm not trying to be a hero. Marcus smiled. Heroes are loud. You're just real. Real's messy, she said. So are scrubs, he replied. A young bailiff approached. Ma'am, my dad's a nurse. Thank you for not changing. For us, for anyone. Aisha touched her arm gently. Your dad's the hero. I just wore the uniform today. When court resumed, the gallery had doubled. Nurses stood along the walls in silent solidarity. Judge Marshall entered, paused at the crowd, then struck her gavel. Court is in session. Her voice, once cold, now carried respect. A woman in scrubs had walked into her courtroom and shown her what duty really meant. The judge sat high, robed, commanding, but today she felt seen, not superior. Before closing arguments, she said, I've reviewed the testimony, documents, and transcript. Ms. Coleman, you said you didn't choose between your job and your children. You chose to be the mother you'd want if your child needed saving. That stayed with me. The gallery held its breath. This court values decorum, but I failed to see that true decorum is sacrifice without complaint. You showed that in the very scrubs I criticized. I was wrong. Whispers spread. Strike all comments about Ms. Coleman's attire from the record, she ordered. This courtroom has seen suited liars and polished frauds. Today we saw someone save a life, then face judgment for not dressing up. Ms. Coleman, I owe you an apology and gratitude. The gallery rose one by one, nurses, clerks, lawyers, even Perry. Aisha stood too, not for herself, but with them. Judge Marshall's voice wavered. Let the record show this court sees strength doesn't always wear a tie. Sometimes it wears scrubs, arrives late, and holds the world together. The room was still standing when Aisha sat. The nurses along the walls stood like sentinels. The bailiff stood taller, as if remembering what justice served. Marcus Tate rose. Your Honor, my client's actions, her supervisor's testimony, and this room's response speak louder than I could. Vincent Perry stood, hesitating. The smirk was gone. I withdraw my closing. The evidence is clear. He turned to Aisha. Ms. Coleman, I misjudged you.
I'm sorry.
Aisha nodded. No tears, no drama, just presence. Judge Marshall folded her hands. I've made my ruling. Full physical and legal custody remains with Aisha Coleman. No evidence suggests her children would be better elsewhere. This court recognizes her sacrifice, stability, and strength. Aisha exhaled, relief washing over her. Her life, raw, tired, real, was enough. The judge added, This court thanks Ms. Coleman for reminding us justice serves those who show up, even on empty. From today, nurses coming from shifts will be offered coffee, not criticism. One person clapped, then another, until the room erupted in applause. Not for a verdict, but for a woman who saved a life and didn't have time to change. The ovation lasted a minute, uninterrupted. Judge Marshall let it roll, like a tide washing away the morning's errors. When court adjourned, reporters swarmed outside, but Aisha didn't linger. She walked through, hugged her kids waiting on the courthouse steps, and said, Let's go home. Is it done? Her son asked. No, baby, she smiled. It's just beginning. That night, her story dominated headlines. Nurses' scrubs spark courtroom revolution, CBS. Teal truth. Moms stand in court, NBC. Hashtags trended. Hashtag Aisha Coleman. Hashtag scrubs pride. Hospitals held Teal days, encouraging staff to wear scrubs proudly. T-shirts appeared with Aisha's quote, Save a life or change for you. I chose the life. Aisha didn't watch. She was tucking in her kids, grading homework, reheating dinner. A neighbor dropped off news clippings. You're everywhere, she said. I just want to be where I'm needed, Aisha replied. Her son asked, Will they forget you? They might forget my name, she said. But not what we showed them. Strength isn't loud, it's showing up when it's hard. 3 weeks later, the curator of the Georgia Museum of Labor and Service called. Ms. Coleman, we'd like your scrubs for a permanent exhibit. My scrubs? Aisha asked, stunned. Yes, beside a steelworker's helmet and a teacher's chalkboard. You didn't just fight for custody. You showed a nation who holds it together. Aisha hesitated, then mailed the laundered scrubs, still faintly stained. The museum's plaque read, The Scrubs That Stood. Worn by Aisha Coleman, who reminded us strength wears fatigue, grace, and purpose. Schools visited the exhibit. A teacher in Atlanta built a lesson, Everyday Valor. Those who change everything quietly. Letters poured in, from nurses, parents, even a state judge. I judged polish over purpose. You showed me better. Aisha kept working, kissing foreheads, showing up. One morning, her son said, I want to wear scrubs when I grow up. She zipped his jacket. Wear what you want. Just show up for those who need you. He nodded, and in that moment, another seed was planted. When the world clapped, it wasn't for drama. It was for a woman who showed up, covered in blood and love, and never asked for applause. Her story reached the Georgia state capitol. Lawmakers, moved by the viral clip and public outcry, introduced the Coleman Standard, ensuring medical workers could wear uniforms in court without penalty. It passed in 4 states within months. One senator said, "She didn't testify to change laws. She testified because she had to." Her courage changed them anyway. Courtrooms updated decorum rules, allowing scrubs for those coming from shifts. A judge wrote, "My robe doesn't let me demand apologies from those who save lives." Back in Augusta, Aisha didn't chase fame. She lived one shift, one hug, one story at a time. The mayor renamed Nurses Day Aisha Coleman Day, honoring those who show up. Her son saw a flyer and gasped, "They named a day after you?" "No, sweetheart," she said, sipping coffee. "They named it for what we do. We show up, not perfect, just there." Outside, hospital bells rang. Across the country, nurses wore scrubs with pride, and courtrooms paused at the sight of teal. Aisha Coleman hadn't meant to shout. She was too tired to pretend, too brave to change, and too devoted to walk away from those she loved, whether they needed a nurse or a mother who never missed a fight.